I think that's why that's the one I would pick. Like,
if I guess for me, and I guess this is a different.
I mean, if we're sitting there and being like, what conspiracy theory do I wish was true? Like living dinosaurs, of course.
And I guess that's the thing is like...
That's not what I was talking about, though. I was like...
No, but I guess for me, those answers are one and the same. If I'm going to believe a conspiracy theory, I'm going to believe the most interesting one. Because if I'm going to be known as believing something stupid...
Well, I don't want to be known as the guy believing in conspiracy theories. Let's get that straight.
Like, if I believe in one, I'm going to believe in the most wild one, because...
See, I'm going to believe in the most realistic one.
I'm going to believe in the most wild one, because then I wholeheartedly believe... in a crazy fun world, as opposed to just like a world where the grass might know my secrets.
I don't know. That seems like, I mean, not plausible, but like plausible, right?
I mean, I don't believe it, but like, I can see how I believe it.
I have come on a mission of gravest consequence, for I am the Watcher, member of an ancient race far older than man. But though our power is great, we are pledged only to watch, never to interfere. But now mankind faces the greatest danger it has ever known, the danger of
the Watchers of Earth. 199,999.
Welcome to the Watchers of Earth 199,999. I am your host, Andrew, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Seth.
I am here.
Our third co-host, Joe, couldn't be here today because he is completely smashed by Dwarven Ale, and our fourth co-host, Uatu, is here, but he has sworn only to watch and to never interfere.
So today we watched Avengers Age of Ultron, which originally premiered May 1st, 2015, directed by Joss Whedon, written by Joss Whedon. When Tony Stark and Bruce Banner try to jumpstart a dormant peacekeeping program called Ultron, things go horribly wrong, and it's up to the Earth's mightiest heroes to stop the villainous Ultron from enacting his terrible plan.
So, Seth, in a sentence or less, what did you think?
Big asterisk.
I mean, that's basically a given.
Well, Tuesday night, it's obviously going to be different.
Yeah.
Usually we at least go a week between these. This was, what?
4 days?
Which I guess is not that much different. But I really felt tired early on. I kind of woke up later, but I just feel this one, out of a lot of them, has a moment of like, well, maybe if I watch this, another day, would I think anything different of it? I think it had interesting ideas executed mediocrely.
That's basically where I land. I do want to say, I was considering when I knew I wasn't going to be available to do this weekend, and I mentioned doing it earlier. I was kind of thinking Thursday, and you had mentioned Thursday, but then I knew I was getting the shot tomorrow morning, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to feel up for it later, and I was just to pull the curtain back a little bit. I've been editing. We're several episodes ahead. This is, I think, episode 11. And
yes,
we've only posted 3 so far. So I've been making my way through that backlog because I want to get to the point that regardless of what's posted, I'm editing an episode before we record the next one. So I'm trying to get through the backlog of all the episodes we've edited, and I've been making pretty decent progress. And when I get into these kind of moods where I just want to get stuff done, I don't like putting anything on the back burner, because the second I do that, I realize I don't need to do anything, and then it just snowballs. So I was like, if we can do this week, rather than putting it off until next week, or I guess even Sunday if we were free, I guess we could have done that. I figured we'll do it now. And I was kind of while I was watching it, I didn't get the same, I wasn't tired or anything, but it was something where it's just it's a weird mood to kind of jump into it on a work day like this and everything. But beyond that, I'm in the same point in the same boat where it's full of interesting ideas. Most of them are not done well. I think the logic at the center of the entirety of the movie is not good, and there's a lot of easy nitpicking. But I think compared to the first Avengers movie, it's definitely more entertaining. There's way more comic booky stuff happening, regardless of whether it makes sense or not. So I found it a more entertaining movie, and it was just kind of like you said, if it was on a different day, I think I might have enjoyed it a little more than I did. But I actually I enjoyed this, for as much as this is one of those movies like Thor 2 that everybody hates, and Iron Man 2.
I remember hearing a lot of people didn't like it, or at least that's the narrative I remember.
It's like the hindsight's 2020. Like when this came out, everybody loved this movie. Looking back on it now, everybody picks it apart, and I think you can do that with any of these. And I think this holds up just as well as the first Avengers movie does. The only thing that the first one has on this is that it's simpler, so its logic isn't quite as stupid because it's not as many tangled webs being weaved.
Well, and it's the second time around. I guess my question to you, have you read the Age of Ultron storyline?
Yes.
How is this very similar?
Not at all. Age of Ultron, the comic storyline, if I don't remember it super well, but it's like an alternate timeline thing. It's like some kind of alternate future or alternate past where either they didn't stop Ultron the first time or some future where Ultron runs rampant. I don't remember. It's almost nothing like this. I don't think it has anything in common.
Okay. I was wondering, because you talk about nitpicking. The first thing Kirsten said was she didn't know why, and we'll get into these things, and I'm going to lead into a different topic here right after this, but she was saying that didn't Clint Barton and Natasha have a thing going? Where did that go? Didn't Hulk have a girlfriend at some point? Where did that go? And things like that. And I think that's some nitpicking, but what I wanted to touch on was this felt like a reroute, because as I was kind of explaining to her, well, the first Incredible Hulk movie is this weird bubble movie where it's included, but it's not.
I will say, as far as Hulk goes, it seems like this movie is asserting that this Hulk is its own thing.
Mm-hmm. And then the other thing I touched on, and why I was wondering how much of this came from the Ultron storyline or anything around there, is because it seemed like they wanted to do kind of a more, let's get to know who these people are outside of superheroing. Mm-hmm. It's a big point with Natasha. It's a big point with Clint. With Kirsten asking, I thought Black Widow and Clint were a thing, and this all just kind of came out of nowhere. It felt to me like Joss Whedon said, oh, well, I want to explore kind of a more hominess side. Clint Barton's the only person that we don't really know anything about, so he's the only person we can do it with.
It felt like a course correction. On that note, it felt like a course correction from the first movie where Clint is not really in it, so this one is making up for lost time by giving him stuff to do. I don't even really know if it's a lot or anything.
I was thinking that Clint is such a weird person where...
Hold on. Let's go ahead and just jump into discussion, because I feel like we're just getting to that point. So here's...
I usually always do, and I forget that you do.
Yeah, and I normally I don't care, but I'm always just like, I need that cut, because otherwise, I don't know. It's weird for me. I like my segmentation. It helps me. I like list articles. So hard cut here.
Now you took the wind out of my sails.
So while you're thinking what you were going to say, I will say on that Natasha and Clint thing, I can see where people walk away thinking that, but I do think that first movie does a pretty decent job of establishing them as work friends, not a romantic couple. Especially, I think it's mostly just the lens that, if there's a female and a male character talking to each other in a movie 9 times out of 10, that means they're a love interest. And that's especially in these Marvel movies. Each one has a female character who exists just to be the thing that the male character presses his lips against at some point. So I can see how
there's a couple problems. I think it's the fact that while the first movie does a decent job at being like, hey, they're work buddies, I think it also does a similar job being like, hey, they're a romantic interest, because we don't really know anything about Natasha. We don't really know anything about Clint. And the only thing we know is that they're like, hey, you're my best friend. Like, you're so great.
Again,
best friend.
You say that, but that's what I'm saying is, like, in a movie, we're trained to just assume that the female character and the male character that spend a lot of screen time together are romantically linked. But I do not think anything in that movie beyond the fact that that is just the language of movies, unfortunately, I don't think anything in that movie actually asserts in any way that they are anything more than coworkers.
And I guess that's just the nature of the semantics we always get into, where it's like, well, you can't take the line out of the movie, or the movie out of the line. You know what I mean? Like, I see what you're saying, where it's like, well, yeah, Black Widow's the only woman in the movie. And so...
Because at no point do they stare really longingly at each other. They don't voice anything close to romantic feelings. In fact, I think at one point in the first movie, I could be wrong, I'm pretty sure at some point they say something. One of them one of them says something about the other one. I believe it's Natasha says something about Clint since he's barely in the movie. That like kind of asserts that. I'm almost certain someone mentions a relationship and like one of the other Avengers says something, and I think Natasha like turns it down or something. I'm 90% certain.
Again, the language of movies doesn't mean anything. Coming from a rewatch recently, I was under the I had the wool thrown over my eyes, and I was like, okay, yeah, like, sure, it's not a romantic thing, but they are, out of everybody on the team, they are the closest to each other. Which, yep, they're just work friends, but like, I don't know. In The Winter Soldier, Natasha and Steve felt like work friends. It didn't feel like relationship.
See, I think that one specifically goes out of its way to assert that something could be happening until Steve turns her down, and that's her, like, in this movie they say like, hey, she flirts with a lot of people. It's like what she does, I guess. I feel like in The Winter Soldier it is supposed to be leading you to think that, and so that it can say like, no, that's not what this is. I feel like,
and I guess you just edited our Captain America episode, so maybe I am completely hypocritical here.
Well, I didn't get The Winter Soldier yet.
Oh, yeah. But maybe by then you can call me out on it. On a similar note, I don't know why, and I don't know how to say this without it blowing a, like, not even a molehill into a mountain, but like a grain of salt into like 2 grains of salt. I don't know how I feel about the Natasha Banner stuff, and I don't know why. There was just something that just kind of like, this is weird, and I don't know, I don't feel like I'm on board with it. And I don't know why I'm not on board with it.
There's elements to it that I find interesting in the same way that Paul Dini's fascination with Batman and Wonder Woman getting together is interesting, but not something I'm actively rooting for. There's like interesting ideas in there. My big thing is it's just, she's the only female on the team. And the fact that the first movie, as I said, in the first movie, it felt to me that it was kind of asserting that she's just another coworker. Unfortunately, it's still filmed through a male lens where there's a lot of like, I don't know. In this, there's a scene in this where Bruce falls on her boobs, and I'm just like, was that necessary? Anyway, it's...
Oh, you know what was not necessary? Tony Stark being like, whoa, he's fucking, don't hide the zucchini.
Oh man, I got something else to say about Tony Stark later. Actually, I got a lot of things to say about Tony Stark.
Now that the mics are off, let's talk about Tony Stark.
But it's the fact that, like, in the first movie, she's a pseudo love interest that is subverted. In Avengers, it seems to assert that, like, she's not a love interest, she's just another coworker. Captain America definitely asserts that she's not a love interest and is just another coworker. And then this one, it goes, well, she's the lady, she's got to have a love interest. Like, she can't just be one of the boys. And so that...
See, and that's how she's always felt to me.
Oh, I agree, but I'm saying, like...
Yeah, I know, I'm not
from a boardroom standpoint, whether this is a boardroom decision or a Joss Whedon decision, I don't know or care.
It's the Megan Fox thing, where it's just like, we gotta have hot chicks make out with dudes.
Yeah, she's got to have a love interest. I was gonna say you don't see Captain America pining after anyone, but this is actually one where they bring what's her name back, Peggy, for a scene. But it's unnecessary. I guess that's where my problem really lies for it. Like, I think there are interesting ideas in there, well thought out or not, or worth exploring or not. I think there's an interesting idea that, like, she seems to be drawn to the one guy that isn't, like, an alpha male.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, it's an interesting idea, I guess, on paper when you just say, like, super aggressive combat lady surrounded by macho dudes is only interested in the one that doesn't want to fight. It's like an interesting thing on paper. I don't really care, and it's not like it hasn't been done before.
And I think that's a lot of this movie.
It's full of not even half-baked. It's full of ideas. It's like jam-packed. This movie is overstuffed with things. And some of them are interesting, some of them are fine, some of them are dumb. But the big problem is they're all there.
I don't know, are you ready to go into Clint's thing?
What do you mean about Clint's thing?
Like his family life?
Well, before we do that, we'll hit that naturally. I want to kind of step through the plot. We'll hit that about as naturally as the movie does. We open up with the Avengers. I do not care about Avengers as a military force. And I know that like the big thing that I don't like about these movies is almost every single character is a less interesting version of themselves than in the comics. And some of that's just comic goofiness that appeals to me versus this like realistic seriousness. Some of that is just years of history that these characters don't have, but everyone's kind of bland and uninteresting visually and otherwise. Baron von Strucker is just a dude with a weird... You sent me that picture a couple weeks ago of someone who like bolted glasses to their nose, and he's got that, but for a monocle, it's stupid. But I don't care about like the Avengers as a military force. And I know that this mission that they're on is specifically hunting down Loki's staff, and they imply that they've done other things, but it seems to be like this all they've done since Avengers 1 is get together to hunt down the remainders of Loki's attack, I guess.
So I was thinking, and I feel like we've touched on this a little bit in other episodes, but I was thinking during this movie about the concessions you have to make to adapt comic books to movies.
For a mainstream audience. Because I don't think a lot of these concessions have to... I don't think a lot of these concessions have to be made.
I think there's a lot of stuff you can throw a little side bit in one issue out of 6. But I think that's harder to fit in a 2.5-hour movie.
Sure. And I guess that also goes into my thing that I brought up before on this show, that I don't really care for the Marvel Cinematic Universe's movies because it's all events, nothing else. Everything that happens to everybody is an event. It's a big thing. And it's nice that this movie tries to take some time to step away from that.
But movies by nature are kind of like big things.
Oh, I agree.
Losing the smaller moments or forcing them into a weird spot in a limited time frame just kind of feels noticeable.
Mm-hmm.
And, this is at a time before TV was the new movie. Before the silver screen is now the golden screen. And I know this is not a new idea, but like people want shows now because you can expand on things. You can let things rest. You can take that episode to do something. And I agree with that with comic books too, where during a storyline, the Clint Barton stuff can just be an issue.
And you also have the benefit with comic books, as much as I hate events, like when you have an event, you have the event book, which is basically what the movie is, and then you have the tie-ins, which is all the other stuff. Like you might have an issue of Hawkeye where you go visit Hawkeye's family. You might have, an issue of Iron Man that shows him building, like it doesn't have to waste all this time showing you the Ultron stuff. You can have an entire issue of, Tony Stark and Bruce Banner arguing in their companion books. So
you have different spots for these to kind of build, for lack of a better term. I mean, I think it's probably 50-50 naturally in comics. Whereas here, everything needs to work in this time frame, and I think it just rarely doesn't.
Yeah, when you mentioned concessions, I thought you were saying, like, well, you can't have all the goofy comic book stuff because it's a movie. When you're speaking literally, like, narrative concessions, like time-wise.
Yes.
Actual, I fully agree.
Writing restrictions.
Yeah, I agree.
The nature of comic books can't really be put into these movies. And I think it struggles for that because of I think some of it is probably a little bit of, and I feel bad kind of bringing this up every now and then, and you call me out on it when I do. I know these characters are comic book characters. I've read them in comic books. I know what comic books are. I've interacted with them in comics. And so it's like when you watch a movie of your favorite book, and you're just like, the book's better. And it's like, well, because the book isn't a 2.5-hour movie based on 700 pages. And, and the build up and being able to take time and being able to expand on things and being able, not having to worry about hiring CG artists to replicate scenes or working with actors or actresses and things like that.
I think there's a little bit, not as much as there is a detriment, but I think there's a little bit of a benefit. Because when you are working under the constraints of a movie, sometimes you have to find... It's why you get so many of these Marvel movies that are, at the end, Iron Man fights evil Iron Man. You find these ways to make the narrative flow a little smoother, which I don't think is necessarily better, but I think there's a lot more narrative cohesion often in a movie because it has to be. Because you have to make sure that all these pieces are connecting as quickly and easily as possible.
Because that's your moment. Hindsight's 2020, hot take. I can say this 10 years later. I think the most interesting thing about these movies isn't the story. It is the behind-the-scenes movie magic of just making these huge movies. Who cares about Age of Ultron? The story is... I was telling Brad yesterday when we were playing Monster Hunter. I don't know. They're just a bunch of mediocre movies. What do they, what do they do? And what they do is just... put Chris Evans in one movie and Chris Hemsworth in another movie, and then in another movie they both join together and they're both doing things and like they're expanding on stuff.
I remember the most interesting thing about this movie when it came out to me and probably to a lot of people, was the fact that Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch were in this movie, not because anybody gave a shit about them, but because of the fascinating nature of their IP and how both Fox and Marvel own the rights to those characters, because they are mutants. Therefore, Fox's deal, which allowed them to use literally anything labeled as a mutant, allowed them to use them. However, Marvel's deal allows them to use anything under the brand of Avengers, and they are not X-Men characters, despite the fact that they are Magneto's children. They are Avengers characters. They were Avengers villains and X-Men villains very briefly, and Avengers heroes. So as long as they don't mention that they're mutants or give them a mutant origin, they are allowed to be in these movies. And that was fascinating to me. But it's like you said, it's not the story. It's just all the behind the scenes stuff, all the fact that, like, you know, you get these movies that are connected, and it's interesting to see how they piece together. Like the end credit stuff, it's interesting to see where it's going to go next. That's the stuff that makes these movies so engaging. And that's why the shared universe is such a big thing nowadays. It's because it's the spectacle. It's not the movie. It's not the story. Sometimes the story is interesting, but it's not the story. It's the fact that, you know, we're going to lead to a movie where we have Spider-Man and Captain Marvel and Black Panther and Shup McGuffin and all the Ninja Turtles show up and beat the tar out of Big Purple Dude.
And I think there's like a detriment to that too, because while they all connect, like we were saying, the narrative focus ends up being a little disjointed. And we talked about this with The Winter Soldier, where it's just like, what was everybody doing? Like, the time between Guardians happened, right? Like, are we to assume that Guardians happened at like the same time as the first Avengers, or what? You know what I mean? Like, time in the real world passed. We can only assume that time in the MCU world passed. And since we only see the big stuff, the big moments, you can sit there and be like, yeah, Chris Evans has gone through, like, he fought Red Skull, and then he fought the Winter Soldier, and then he fought aliens, and then he fought
his best friend,
Ultron. But, like, he's only in those big moments, and we don't get the ability to see him in small ones.
Like I said, this movie opens up with them hunting down Loki's scepter, and I believe when we watched there's a throwaway line in this movie about the Winter Soldier that definitively places it after that movie, even though it's clear that it is. It just definitively asserts that, like, we haven't forgotten what happened in that movie. Something's still going on with that. I believe when we watched Winter Soldier, you told me that it took place 2 years after Avengers.
Yes. The actual amount of time that it
took.
So
this takes anywhere after 2 years from Avengers.
I assume they're in real time.
I don't know for certain, because I think time starts to slow down, because later movies specifically put in a time jump that lines them up with the current year.
Okay.
So I think time starts slowing down the more you get into these, because they kind of have to. I think. I guess we'll find out as we go, because I don't know that for certain. But there is a time jump, and I'm pretty sure when the time jump happens, it's
I know I've seen
modern
like
day.
chronological timelines and stuff for the MCU.
This takes place anywhere after 2 years, and I know, like, it's probably not easy to find Loki's scepter. I don't remember what the fuck happened to it that it got to Baron Strucker, but okay.
Yeah. Where was it last? In the Winter Soldier, right?
Didn't they use it to stab the big blue space laser in Avengers? Didn't Black Widow use it to stab?
But didn't Loki have it after Avengers?
Well, after Avengers, he gets taken back to Asgard, so I would assume he doesn't have it. And it couldn't have gone back to Asgard, because how could Baron von Strucker have it?
But when did Captain America and Thor fight an Iron Man?
At the beginning,
in the woods, next
in
to
the middle
Loki.
of the movie. I was
one?
talking about a thing that happened at the end of the movie. So,
No, what movie?
in Avengers, she uses it to stab his big blue space laser. That is
Right.
the last I remember seeing it. What happened in the woods
But-
doesn't matter, because that happened like 6 hours before that.
No, I'm talking about a different movie.
They all fought.
I'm trying to figure out what movie are they capturing Loki?
Avengers. This is the beginning of
That's
Avengers.
really Avengers?
Yes.
Where they capture him and then he's just like sitting on the...
Yes.
Thor's gonna like take him back?
Yes.
And then
Yes.
Thor's just like... Or not Thor, Loki's just like sitting on the mountains while people fight?
Absolutely. That is the first Avengers
Oh my
movie.
god!
I don't know how you purge this stuff from your brain.
Because I'm not you. I don't have room for this crap.
I don't have room for it either. I just retain it. I just can't remember basic math, but I'll remember this bullshit.
That was the Avengers? That feels so long ago.
I remember when we watched Power Rangers and we get to the next episode and you're like, I do not remember what happened before.
I do not care to remember this stuff, Andrew.
I don't really give it much of a shit to remember. I just do. So anyway.
In one ear, out the other.
So they're going after a Hydra facility to get Baron von Strucker because he has Loki's staff, which we saw in Winter Soldier he was using to turn two twins into super people. It doesn't really make sense because Loki's staff, we learn, has the Mind Stone, which is how it's able to mind control. It then seems to imply that that is how Scarlet Witch gets her psychokinetic and brain manipulation powers. It does not in any way explain how her brother can run super fast, but he can.
Because of comic science.
While they're there, Scarlet Witch uses her spooky witch magic, which I like. She doesn't do it a whole lot. Later scenes, actually, it's really only at the very beginning. She does her, like, spooky witch fingers, and she does that in all the other scenes where she just, like, shows up behind people and she's like, ooh, I'm spooky. But in the very first scene...
Her intro's great.
When she shows up and she, like, walks backwards through a door and it slams shut, it's
and
awesome.
It's like, they cut frames and stuff. It's so good.
But then they kind of don't... I'm sure they'd probably still do some cut frames and stuff later, but for the most part, she just kind of shows up behind people and goes, ooh, and wiggles her fingers.
It's not like that weird thriller horror vibe they had at the beginning.
So she uses her spooky witch powers on Iron Man and makes him see a vision. And apparently, the Mind Stone allows her to actually predict the future, which they say later, because that's how they know the vision. And apparently some of this stuff is like actually seeing the future, and something. Her powers are
I have no idea. I know they say like she can do telekinesis and all this stuff, but she has comic book magic where she can just kind of work the story.
She makes Iron Man think he sees everybody die, and he believes that he could have done more to stop it, which sets him off. Her plan, I think the stone was speaking to her or something, because she later, when they meet Ultron, she's like, I wasn't expecting you, but she knew like something was coming. Like that's why she set Iron Man on this path, was to do something.
I guess it didn't seem like
she says this
to me.
She says it though.
Okay.
Like I don't think it seems like that at all, but she basically says this.
Because I know there's a moment where she turns on Ultron, but I guess when she gave Iron Man the heebie-jeebies, I just thought that was her.
It was part of a long-term plan for something.
See, I didn't see it as a long-term plan then.
I didn't either until
she was like, this was a long-term plan.
Yeah, until they kind of say that there was some gobbledygook nonsense something that she had a whole plan for. So after he sees this vision, he freaks out. He scans the gem inside Loki's staff and finds out that there's like a brain in there, like a computer brain, but it's like super smart. And he decides that he's going to use that to make something that he had been working on with Bruce Banner called the Ultron program, which was like a global defense. As he puts it, he wants to put armor around the world or whatever. And this is yet another movie number 4 so far, where the villain is because Iron Man did a dumb thing. That's the first Iron Man movie. That's the second Iron Man movie. That's the third Iron Man movie. It's this movie, and it's not the last one. In fact, it's almost every movie he shows up in, except for Avengers 1. It's always like Iron Man did something to fuck over somebody. Because her whole thing is she wants to fuck over Stark because she ruined
their town.
They live in Sokovia, which was at some point in the past bombed by Stark military stuff. And so they saw a bomb that said Stark on the side, and now they hate his guts. He also decides to build a supervillain because he's a fucking dumbass who has never seen a movie with AI ever. AI is never a good idea, according to movies. And he's like, let's make an even better one and let it protect the whole world.
To be fair, in a world with Jarvis, it's a little different.
To be fair, he also says we have 3 days to figure this out before they take the scepter away from us. And then Bruce Banner is like, let's maybe not do this. It's probably not a good idea, I think, maybe.
Yeah.
So, no, Iron Man fucking sucks in this movie. But they managed to build this thing. It keeps failing, but while they're having a big stupid party, it's not stupid. The party's fun enough. Actually, it's the after-party stuff with Thor's hammer is literally the only thing that I really remember from it. But it comes online. It supposedly kills Jarvis and takes over. Iron Man built a whole bunch of he built a whole bunch of autonomous robot suits to go help when they do their war crimes. One of them gets like super destroyed by a bunch of people throwing bottles at it somehow. he takes over all these suits of armor, and while they're all having this fun little thing where they're trying to lift Thor's hammer, and nobody's able to except for Steve nudges it, he shows up as a spooky, half-destroyed robot man because there was one of them that was destroyed, and he decided that's the one he's going to upload his conscious into, just so that he can have like a dramatic spooky scene where he's like a zombie robot. And he threatens everybody because he decides that the only way to actually save the world is to destroy the world or some nonsense. They fight off all these robots. At one point, Captain America puts a robot in a chokehold because I don't think he really understands how a robot works, but I can't really blame him because he's like caveman from 1940s times. But he's able to he's not physically anywhere. He's able to, via the internet, upload his brain wherever.
The cloud.
So one of the robots steals Loki's scepter. They gotta track him down. They find there's a ton of name dropping and a ton of just like stuff that happens in this movie. He wants to use vibranium to make himself a thing, supposedly a body, but later other stuff too. And so they hunt down Claw. And then we get a whole nother scene where the Scarlet Witch does her spooky witch magic on everybody, and she makes... Oh, I forgot. So, real quick. I mentioned that I had something to say about Iron Man. So Iron Man sucks in this movie because he makes a supervillain, and even at the end, when it turns out he's right because Thor has a different vision, he also tries to double down on his stupid idea. But when he goes to lift Thor's hammer, he says, if I pick up this hammer, I get to be king of Asgard, right? And Thor says, yep. And he goes, I want you to know, I'm going to reinstate Prima Noctis. Do you know what that is?
I do not. I figured it was some funny line.
It's not. It's super gross. It was, Prima Nocta was a, as I understand it.
Did you just know this?
Yes.
Why?
I probably from looking it up the first time I saw this movie.
Gross fucker.
Did you look up what it is?
Yeah.
Go ahead and tell the audience what Prima Nocta is.
That's the idea that kings can have sex with the bride on their wedding nights.
Yeah, how about that? It's supposed to be like a goofy little fun line.
He's my hero.
Hate it. Hate it. Yeah, so that's why he is
the worst.
The worst in this movie. But there's a whole nother big fight scene where Ultron now has a new body, and he's quippy because he's made off of Stark's brainwaves, I guess, or something.
He's technically created by Stark.
Wanda gives everybody visions again, except for Hawkeye, but she gives Black Widow a vision, so we see a bit of the Red Room in her training as an assassin. She gives Captain America a vision where he has a thing that doesn't really double down on the horror. There's like a couple bits. In fact, it might only be one scene during this where there's a bunch of soldiers in a dance hall celebrating the end of the war, and then one of them is just like laughing while laying on the floor covered in blood. And then it cuts away, and I don't think we ever cut back to that. But Peggy's there, and Thor has a vision of Asgard and how it's gone to hell or something. What does she make? Okay, everybody else is comatose when she does this. But when she goes to Hulk, she makes him rampage. And I don't know if he's supposed to be seeing something or if she just made him angry and he's out of control. He seems cognizant of what's going on when he's fighting Stark later.
I guess
he looks right at him.
I mean, I was able to kind of hand wave that as just kind of a weird thing with Bruce and Hulk's brain. And so I guess I didn't really press.
I just didn't understand. It didn't matter.
She already had like weird, she could do anything powers.
I guess it's fine by me. Like, it is what it is, but I feel like we needed to see something because everybody else we watch a little scene, and honestly those scenes don't really matter. I guess with the exception of Natasha's, because hers gives us some history on her. But Captain America's just par for the course what we would expect from him. Thor's is complete nonsense. In fact, everything Thor does in this movie is complete nonsense. Hulk rampages in a scene that goes on too long. Iron Man summons a new suit called Veronica, or maybe Veronica is just the satellite that shoots the suit at him. I'm not really sure, but it's the Hulkbuster suit. They fight. There's a lot of fun stuff in this fight, but it goes on forever.
Plus, how much do we need to see? Like Kirsten said, who cares about heroes fighting each other? Who wants that?
And there's a lot of it in this movie. It's not as bad as the first movie, but there are multiple scenes of them yelling at each other.
Didn't we already get that? I was reading through like some trivia and stuff, and Joss Whedon, I have here like a quote where he says that they're disparate. They're very disparate characters. The joy of the Avengers is that they really don't belong in the same room. And it's like, no, I like that. Why can't they just all be like a team? Especially after we already had a movie where they're like, hey, we have to be a team now.
Yeah, and I mean, as you're well aware with a movie called Civil War, it's not the last one where they fight each other. It's unnecessary. And
especially since it doesn't really matter.
The Hulk scene is literally there. I guess story-wise, it's there to be like another reason for Banner to kind of be down on himself. Not that it really matters.
But you can do
lot.
that without having Iron Man fight him.
Oh, absolutely. But if you're going to have Hulk Rampage, you got to put Iron Man in the Hulkbuster armor because that's the cool, fun comic thing.
Got to sell toys.
It just goes on forever. But after all this, everybody's all sad because Ultron got away with the vibranium. And so they decide to go do a Northampton, which is a thing from Ninja Turtles. If you've seen the first Ninja Turtles movie, they all go to April's family's farm. It's a Ninja Turtles staple. There's a farm that they all go hang out at some point. Sometimes it's Casey Jones' farm. Sometimes it's April's farm. And in the most recent comic book series, there's an arc called Northampton where the worst thing that has happened to them yet happens. And then there's like a 4-issue arc where they all go collect their feelings on a farm. And it's great. But I call this the Northampton. But they go to Hawkeye's farm where we learn that he has a family, which he has kept secret for reasons. There's not really
because he says a line, and maybe he just says he wants to keep it secret. I assume it's separating work-life balance. Like,
I mean, I guess so, and I guess it was to keep them off the grid and safe, I guess, which is also fine. But it doesn't really matter. As far as I know, the Avengers aren't like they are a big deal, and we learned in other movies like people know who they are. But it's also just like, I don't know, does it matter? His whole role. This is another movie where at the beginning when they're doing their siege on Strucker's base, and he's just like in a Jeep shooting arrows, and I was like, you still don't belong here, dude. I fully believe Black Widow on the team. He is just a dude there, and he calls it out multiple times in this movie.
I agree. And if we want to get into Clint's farm now,
this is the time. We're at that point.
I never know what you want to do with the synopsis.
I just want to follow things chronologically if we can. We hit that point.
No offense, I always like kind of zone out because I'm just like,
I can tell you haven't been talking a whole lot in this.
I don't really have much to say. You're just kind of like, and then this happened, and then she hit him with a spear. She shoots him with a spear. She shoots him with a spear. I think this is done mediocrely. How do you say that? I know mediocrely is not a word, but very mediocre with a lot of mediocrity. Mediocrity with a lot of mediocrity, I guess is how you say it. This is a really cool idea to me. I'm really fascinated with the idea of this guy who's just like, these are all superheroes, and I'm just kind of there doing what I can, and I come home to my wife and kids, and I'm just like trying to make it work. And that's really cool, and a really neat thing to explore. They kind of mention it here, and especially after watching Zack Snyder's Justice League, where we talked about it. Superman and Wonder Woman, I mean, they feel like gods. And Linda Cardellini mentions, like, these people are kind of like gods. They don't feel like it. They just feel like superheroes.
For a movie with a character who literally is a god, you're right.
Feels like a superhero.
He just feels like a guy that can shoot. He's strong, can fly, and can shoot lightning.
And I think there's something neat about just like a guy who's really good at shooting arrows. He has superhuman abilities, but he is at the end of the spectrum. And it's just something that like that's cool to kind of see how he manages that. And he's just like, and especially I really liked his little monologue at the end to Scarlet Witch, where he's just like, you can stay here. I'll have your brother come get you. You can go out there and be an Avenger. All I could, like, there's robots and all this other, there's a floating island. I shoot arrows, but that's what I know how to do. And like, that to me is such a fascinating story. The problem is, again, it needs to fit it in this 2.5-hour movie with a floating island and giant robot, like, and fighting robots and fighting each other and
debatably
stories and stuff like that.
I guess when you put it like that, yes, the bloat is there. But when you say they put it in this movie with a floating island and a bunch of robots and stuff, it's like, well, I guess that would be the movie to put it into. Like, you want to put it in the weirdest, biggest movie.
Yeah, but
you're talking about bloat. I agree.
It also doesn't help that Clint isn't, I don't know, he's the least, to me at least, the least fleshed out.
Interesting.
The least interesting, the least fleshed out. And even when they give him a family, I'm just like, it's still Clint. I don't care.
Yes.
Like, we're 11 films in here. What are you going to do? Like, this isn't giving him anything to work with, it didn't seem like. And even at the end when he shows up and Linda Cardellini's like, oh my gosh, you're back. But his kids don't care. They don't run to him after he just, like, saved the world and risked his life and all this stuff. And it just kind of feels a little... If the movie was about that, in kind of like a Logan sort of way, where it's like, hey, the movie is about Clint Barton's farm family, but the fact that he is also a superhero and he has to do this stuff. How that works with him mentally, how that affects his relationship, how that affects all that stuff. That's super cool to me. But the movie isn't about that. The movie is about a floating island with robots.
Could be the new Hawkeye show that's coming out. I don't really know what that.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Encompassing. I do want to pull back. So a little bit of behind the scenes thing. Joss Whedon apparently had to fight to keep that scene, not even scene, that chunk in the movie. Apparently the studio wanted him to cut it because they thought it was boring. I think the movie is bloated and
it feels long.
It does feel long. I think it's nice to have that bit of cool down though for the movie. I just think the movie's already big and bloated enough that it just doesn't work the way it should in like maybe a 90-minute movie where you have like a 20-minute bit where everything kind of cools down for a bit.
It also shares those cooldowns with some of the Black Widow Hulk stuff, where they're trying to figure out the relationship. It cools down a bit with the after party, where everybody's just kind of relaxed.
But I will say that cool down happens really before anything. Like, it's after your first opening scene, but it's not really a cool down so much as it's just like, you start with your big pizzazz, and then you have your movie. And this is just the movie before the big stuff happens.
True.
For the party scene. But in order to allow him to keep that bit in the movie, they made him do the bit where Thor goes into a cave jacuzzi with Stellan Skarsgård, and that is unnecessary. It is there just so that they can talk about what the Infinity Stones are later. It's and not even that scene exists is complete nonsense. It's just there so that when Thor shows up later, he can tell everybody what the stones are.
So,
and it's stupid.
There is a line in the after party where they're like, "Oh, where's Peggy and Jane?"
You mean Pepper? Pepper. Peggy.
What if she was just like, "Hey, Cap, where's Peggy? Where's Peggy? Why didn't you bring Peggy?" And they're like, "Oh, they're not in the movie."
It's weird because this movie has so many other characters show up.
Yeah, it's just...
what were Natalie Portman and what's her name?
Gwyneth
Paltrow demanding to show up.
Especially since like all of the Thor movies have to deal with this like star-crossed lovers between Jane and Thor, but then when it's not that, it's just like, get fucked. Like, I'm gonna go catch up on Stellan Skarsgård. Like,
it is bizarre that she's not in this, and I think it was because she was out by this point. Like, I don't think she does not show up for 3, and I think she was gone.
But it's just something where like they're always pining after each other in their movies, and then like during Avengers movies, I always feel like Thor just says, "Don't tell her I'm here.
This is the only time I get to myself.
I don't want her to know I'm here. I just
Can
want
we
to hang
have
out
a guys' night
with her cool doctor bro." But it's just such a weird thing. Like, whatever. Tony, like him being like, Pepper has stuff to do, and is that Pepper's jam? Probably not, but...
Especially since Steve apparently invited everybody who still survived after the war to that party. And they also have that one woman, I'm looking at the Wikipedia, what's her name? Helen Cho, who I did not remember her role in this movie. And I know that this was around the time that movie studios really started, because it happened in Iron Man 3? 2? They were really courting China and making sure
that they wanted to watch the movies.
And it seemed so weird when she showed up at the beginning, when they mentioned her name. And I remember that there was some doctor that was mentioned in one of the other 2 Iron Man movies that I don't think it's mentioned. He might be mentioned in the American version, but he gets like a scene with Iron Man where he's like, "Iron Man, you're my best friend." And Iron Man's like, "You too, dude." Because they were like big name Chinese actors that were put into the movie so that they could kind of pitch it over there. I thought that's what she was, and I'm apparently wrong. I don't know this actress, but when they announced her, and then she kind of shows up weirdly in the scene where she's just kind of like standing there with Maria Hill, and then she disappears, and then during the party, she's there in the background the whole time, but she doesn't say anything, and I was like,
well, and she has that bit with he's just like, is Thor gonna be there?
It was weird because it felt like, until she shows up later and is part of the movie, I was like, is this just like the scraps of like other scenes where she gets more time, like where she does stuff for like the overseas version of the movie, because that is what happened in one of the Iron Man movies, where they just filmed one or two scenes that featured these other actors. And I thought maybe that was just like this time they built her into more scenes, but they took out everything that was extraneous because she's not really important. But it turns out she is. So she was set up. But for the longest time I was like, what is her point? She's not contributing anything. She shows up for like she treats Hawkeye, and then she just kind of like hangs around for a bit. And then she's even there after when Ultron shows up for the after party, when it's like literally nobody but the Avengers and their boss. Mm-hmm. So I was just confused by her. By the end, like, an hour and a half later, she's relevant to the movie and then dies unceremoniously. And Captain America comes up and she's got like a big gash across her chest, and he pulls out a handkerchief and puts it on the shoulder that was not cut.
No, he puts it on the...
Nope. He puts it on the opposite end of that cut. I watched. It was weird.
Okay.
But anyway, where are we? So they're at the farm. You got anything else to say about the farm? I mean, at this point, it basically turns... We're going to the point where it's just action scene. So if you got anything more to say about the farm, Nick Fury shows up. He doesn't really... I don't know. He's there to be there. Like I said, this movie is stuffed with characters.
He's there to bring the helicarrier back.
Yeah, but he doesn't need to be on the farm for that. Like, it's fine that he's there. He's there to kind of give everybody a little pep talk. But he's just kind of there to be like, this is my cameo, bye. And then later on he shows up again.
Who does he talk to?
He talks to Iron Man in the barn.
Yeah.
When Iron Man, they trick him. Velma gives him a little bamboozle, makes him go fix her tractor, and then Nick Fury's in there. Because Nick Fury has like a scene where he is like, I care about you guys the most. You're my best friends. He says some line where I was like, why are you talking only to Tony? And then he says something where he's like, I care about you guys. Do you?
It feels weird to say this after Winter Soldier when he had like a lot to do. This kind of felt like a little phoning in, especially at the end.
And when they were in the house making dinner, there was something about it that just felt like he showed up to set because they gave him a big sack of money.
He just kind of, I think of the Plinkett Star Wars reviews where he's just like, why would you cast Samuel L. Jackson to be your like calm, unemotional Jedi? And I was just kind of thinking like, yeah, you can make Nick, like we've seen Nick Fury unhinged, but this one he was just kind of like, what's up, Tony? Yeah, this kind of sucks, right?
He was like the cool uncle.
Yeah, like
he shows up and he's like, yeah, you guys do you, whatever.
He's like, I'm not in charge of anything anymore. But now that S.H.I.E.L.D.'s not there, you guys will still let me hang out with you, right?
Well, now that S.H.I.E.L.D.'s not there, he doesn't have a job, so he's not stressed anymore.
Yeah.
He's just like, whatever, I'm on my own. I got Netflix now. Have you guys seen Netflix? I didn't have time before. I got an Xbox. He sits at home and when he was washing dishes or whatever he was doing in the kitchen, I don't remember what he was wearing a sweater, and I was looking
at
a
turtleneck sweater on.
Everybody's like so cut, and I was looking at him and I was like, maybe it's just the way the sweater folds, but I was like, it looked like he put on a little bit of a gut there. So Ultron, well, I forgot, there's a whole other action scene. Mm-hmm. It's a chase scene because Ultron goes to this Helen Cho woman who is like she's a doctor that treats Barton's little boo-boo, but then it also turns out she's like a nanobiologist or something. I don't remember. She's like some kind of super high-tech something
She has like some organic thing going on, but I think
I assume it was mentioned earlier in the movie because they reference it like it was. I do not remember them talking about it. I'm sure they did, but I do not remember them mentioning this thing until Ultron shows up and says, put my brain in your meat suit.
No, because I remember she had a line where Ultron said, put my brain in your meat suit, and then she was like, okay, but like I don't know anything about computers. I deal with organic stuff. But
they have like this coffin thing that has whatever it is, it prints. It basically is like a 3D printer for organic material, as I understood it. And it probably was set up earlier in the movie, but I do not remember. But Ultron wants to put his brain in there, and then they use the Loki staff on her to make her do it. And so she's setting it up, and earlier in the movie, Wanda mentions that she can't read Ultron's brain. I guess it's because he's a robot, and this synthetic thing has a like synthetic brain that is an actual like readable brain. So I guess. But she reads this new brain as it's being formed and downloaded with Ultron's thinky bits. And she sees that he wants to destroy the world. And so she unmentalks the mind takers, Dr. Cho, and she cuts the power on the thing. And then Ultron, I don't know, I think that's when he shoots her. And then Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver leave. And Ultron puts this thing into At some point, it gets into a truck. He makes his robot minions put it into a truck, and then there's a long chase scene with a lot of action that's fun, but it's another long scene in a movie full of like tons of stuff.
The only thing I could focus on was when Cap is like fighting on the top of the semi. Why are cars still like driving with them?
They got places to go, man.
And then like the back shoots at, like the thing is scraping on the road as it's driving down, and everyone else is still just like, I'm just trying to get to work. Like, wouldn't you stop?
Yeah.
Like, that's
but,
all.
But then it's not as exciting.
He even like Captain America like falls out of the semi and lands on the car that was driving precariously close behind him, and then like jumps to another car that's still driving forward. I'm just like,
I mean, I'm sure if they had done like a bit where he like falls off the side of the thing and looks into the window of another car, that person would look over shocked that something was happening.
yeah, like it's so weird. That's all I could focus on during that. It's just like, why aren't people stopping?
By the way, what do you think of Ultron's look in this movie? I don't really know where else to put this, but I was kind of thinking about it now.
I guess I don't really have anything to say.
I don't like it.
I mean,
he's got too much of a face. Like he's got like a whole bunch. It's like Optimus Prime in the Transformers movies where they give him like lips and a moving mouth. And
yeah, I mean, I like his like not like I don't like his cheeks, and I would rather have his cool like jack-o'-lantern mouth. But
I get why he looks like that, and it's so that he can emote and stuff, and it's fine. But I just don't care for it. I like James Spader, but I also said this when we were playing Ultimate Alliance 3, because they model that Ultron to speak kind of like James Spader. I like James Spader in this. He does a very good job, and there's a reason that he's like this, because he's supposed to be like a Jarvis Tony Stark fusion thing, so he's got to have personality. I like the Ultron in my brain is an Ultron that sounds like a dial-up modem and just like speaks completely monotone. And I like the big, like, I don't know. I like the spooky robot jack-o'-lantern skull face.
Yeah.
This one is just, he's less imposing because he's got to look more human. Like, it's fine, but I don't care.
I think James Spader did a really good job, but I could only hear him as Robert California. And I was like, it's just one of those things where something is so, it's like oh, hey, Stephen Bloom.
But they chase after him. At some point, they get the stupid casket away from him, and they take it back to Tony Stark, and then Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, who have defected, tell Captain America basically Iron Man is going to overcorrect to try and fix his mistake, and he's going to do something fucking stupid. So they chase after him, and this is where we get another stupid fight with everybody, where Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, Iron Man, and I guess Bruce Banner, because he doesn't Hulk out, but he like strangles Scarlet Witch, all fight each other, and it's dumb because Iron Man thinks the only way to fix everything is to make Ultron 2.0, because someone was like working to stop Ultron when he was like trying to launch nukes or something, and they learned that it was actually Jarvis, who was not destroyed but instead like disappeared and like distributed himself about the internet or whatever, and then he was fighting against Ultron the whole time by like changing nuclear launch codes or something. Because there's a scene where Tony Stark goes to like the internet home base and hacks their computer. But then Thor shows up because he took a little swim in the whirly pool and learned all about the Infinity Stones. And so he comes back and he jumps on top of this casket and he electrocutes it with his superpowers to power it to turn on, and the robot comes out. I didn't like the part where he was like Dr. Manhattan and just standing there without like a Ken doll, I guess. But he's just like, I don't like the way Vision looks. He's got too much going on, like too much piping and crap all over. But when he puts on clothes and then he sees Hulk, he like makes a cape because Thor. He makes a cape because Thor is wearing one. But they're all like, the way they get around to calling him Vision is stupid.
They do everything in their power to not just call him Vision.
And when he sees Thor, he makes a cape, which I thought it was
weird. Like,
that he makes a cape, or
yeah, like I know why.
Here's why. They needed him to look at Thor and do it because they knew if he just made a cape, that'd be stupid. But the Vision has a cape as a comic book character.
Right.
So,
but it's just kind of stupid where he's just like, I'm born. Also, capes are cool.
But they're all debating about whether they can trust this thing. The way they get around to calling him Vision is
Oh, that's what we were talking about. Yeah, they
Because
do everything but call him Vision.
I think at the end they do refer to him as Vision at the very, very end.
They always, I thought they always referred to him as like, but the Vision.
I think at the very end when Natasha and Cap are talking about the new recruits, I believe that's when they say, at one point they refer to him as Vision as his name, or at least as close to his name as the movie would get. But every time before that, like Thor says he has a vision, and then someone, I think it's Tony Stark, is like, well, your vision needs pants or something stupid. And then they say something about his vision again later. And then even Ultron sees it. He's like, my vision. And I was like, what? That was supposed to be you. You weren't thinking about making a baby. You were thinking about putting your brain in that thing. But it's dumb. But they're all debating whether they can trust him. And then he just nonchalantly picks up Mjolnir, which I thought that worked. Yeah, it's a nice thing. I liked at the end when they were debating about how it didn't count. Mm-hmm. And that joke about if you put it in an elevator, the elevator still goes up. The elevator's not worthy.
No, I thought that was good. You mentioned it before, and I didn't think about it until now. Well, that's not true. I just didn't say it. At the after party, when Tony Stark was like, if I lift this, I'm king of Asgard, right? I don't think that's true. Because like when
you're right, that's not true.
Thor got the hammer, he wasn't immediately like he was in the process, and like, but Odin would still dictate a new king, irregardless of the hammer.
Okay, is Thor king now?
I thought so. No, because he didn't want it.
So I would say debatably, whoever can lift this hammer may have the power of Thor. If he's king, I guess technically kingly powers would be the power of Thor. So I would say, I guess there's an argument there, but I don't think he's king right now. So no, why would whoever picks that up be king? It's a fun little joke, but
it's a dumb, doesn't make sense joke.
It's dumb and it's stupid, and I hate this movie now. And now we get to the final battle that goes on forever. The Ultron's big old plan is to make a bunch of rockets underneath Sokovia so that they can shoot it into the Sky Island, like the final village of a JRPG, and then drop it into Earth to make it like a meteor that'll wipe out most of humanity, and then the rest of humanity, if they survive, they'll be stronger for it or something. And then later on, he's just like, I want to kill everybody. Like, he's just kind of like, whatever, which is the thing with these movies where there's always like, I kind of see what you're going for. I don't agree with you, but villain, you got some points that you could probably fine tune a bit. And then at the end, it's like, oh, nope, never mind. You're just a psychopath. Okay, that's fine. You do you. But the scene goes on forever. There's neat stuff, like the Hulk fight. There's neat stuff in it. Like I like when Black Widow uses Captain America's shield. I think Quicksilver is pretty boring. He doesn't really do a whole lot.
He saves Clint.
Sure, but beyond that, he doesn't. It's a lot of like he just kind of like runs around. In the movie,
he just kind of runs around. That's his power.
Yeah, it's boring. Especially like when I know you haven't seen it, but in the like X-Men movies, his powers are more interesting.
I don't remember him in the X-Men. I just remember in the first X-Men movie, there's the kid playing basketball.
Yeah, it's much later movies than that.
I think what I like about these movies is when they all, or at least the Avengers ones, is like you said with when Natasha uses Cap's shield. Thor does like the thing where Thor hits the shield to make it go farther and faster and harder, and like I like when they do teamy things. But it's still just another half hour of watching CGI robots.
Especially because it keeps going. Because like when it starts out, they're like, we got to get Black Widow because she was captured by Ultron, and then we also got to stop Ultron. And Ultron, for all we know, he built a bomb because they don't know what his plan is yet. They just know that he built something other than another body. In fact, they might not even know that. They might just know that he was. I honestly don't know. And it just like it keeps escalating. Like first, it's like we gotta stop Ultron. Then Ultron is attacking people. Then Ultron's made rockets pop out of the ground, and then he's gonna crash. And it just like it keeps going. And then like I keep thinking like the movie's almost over, and then the SHIELD helicarrier shows up, and then everybody's shoving people into the lifeboats, and it keeps going and going and going and going and going and going, and it's just like. I get it. Like, we could be done now. Like, I get an action movie is to have action scenes.
But we've had them.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be this much. Because, I mean, in this movie, you have the opening scene, you have the fight after the party, you have the fight in Africa with Claw, and everybody. Well, I guess Claw's not involved in the fight. He's right before the fight. You have the Hulk rampaging. You have the car chase. You have the tiny little skirmish between everybody when they're going to wake up Vision. And then you have this end scene. And this end scene goes on forever.
Well, it's fun to see.
That's 7 scenes right there. If we don't count the argument about Vision, that's 6 scenes. 6 action scenes.
And, like, it's cool to see Don Cheadle show up. Again, like, it's neat to see the spectacle. And
I was hoping Falcon would show up.
I was so surprised because he's in the party.
Beginning.
And then he's even at the end. I just figured, well, maybe they couldn't get him for longer than that. But then he's at the end. I'm just like, you couldn't... I mean, even if he's not there, just make a CGI thing. But yeah, I was surprised that Falcon didn't show up, because that would have been fun and cool.
Apparently Cho didn't die. I'm looking at the Wikipedia page, and it says she's at the base at the end. I didn't recognize, or I didn't see her there, but
Captain America,
I'm sure she was.
Clots her wound with the hinky. not her other arm.
Oh, it's so funny. It's the undamaged shoulder.
I don't
It's
think
so
so.
funny. It absolutely is, because it's wild, because you can see the whole slash under his arm because he put it on. It's so when she's laying, it's her right shoulder is fine, and that's the shoulder that he puts his handkerchief on. Are you looking it up? Is that what you're clicking at?
Yeah. Keep talking. I have no idea where this even is.
But yeah, the scene just kind of goes on forever. There's a whole thing about Natasha and I keep wanting to call him Hank.
I want to go to bed.
Bruce talking about they're gonna finally leave and they're just gonna go
They're just gonna
live
run
their lives. But then she needs the Hulk to go beat up more robots, and these robots like crumple because, like I said, like Quicksilver just kind of like punches them, and he's just fast, but they like shatter into a million bits. Were you fooled, or did it not even occur to you into thinking Hawkeye was going to die? And did you may have just had future knowledge that he doesn't, but because the movie heavily hints.
I guess
towards
you're right.
that.
The movie does imply. And
I mean, I went in, everybody was like, he's going to die. The whole time I was like, it's obvious he's going to die. Why would you set up all this stuff with his family and about what his wife saying, like, make sure you come back. And he's got there's an unborn kid. Like, it's all the pieces are there. And then it blindsides you with Quicksilver, the character that of course he can die because no one cares about him. He's only in this movie and doesn't do a whole lot.
I guess that part, or when he doesn't accept medical attention on the lifeboats. I think I thought maybe, like, there'd be a thing, or like a scare, or something. Which I guess that was the scare.
When he doesn't accept medical attention, I thought that was weird because he lays down on a chair on the lifeboat, and he leans over and looks at, and the corpse of Quicksilver is just laying there on the floor, and he says like some stupid little like
I didn't realize that was
semi-quippy-
Quicksilver.
Yeah, he says some stupid little like semi-quippy line where he says like something that's like, it's been a hell of a day or something. It's like, dude, you're looking right at the corpse of the man that saved you. And yeah, sure, you use his name. You give your newborn child his name as a middle name. It's like we told Natasha that it was going to be Nathaniel, so we can't just take it back. We can't make him Pietro Nathaniel.
Oh, they did name him.
Yeah, it's on this stupid bib.
I forgot about that. I was like, I looked at it and I just saw the Nathaniel, and I was like, yeah.
You didn't at any point before that think he was going to die?
Like, oh, you mean like when the Gatling gun is shooting?
I mean the entire movie.
Like I said,
like
maybe
this movie
when
screams.
Maybe when he doesn't take medical attention, I was like, is this going to be a thing? I mean, I guess, I don't know. It's something I guess I just didn't really think about. And if you made me choose, like, I guess I thought maybe he would die, because when he doesn't accept medical attention, I was just like, oh, he's just being like a hero. He's like, nope, save civilians.
No, at that point I knew he lived. Like, as soon as Quicksilver dies,
I didn't think he would
lived.
die when the Gatling gun was shooting.
The entire movie, setting up his family, and there are it's always like, it's the last day on the job. One more day until retirement.
Right.
That movie screams it, like with the farm and his wife and the newborn child, and him talking about how he's, there's that talk with his wife where she says like, they need you to keep them together, but make sure you come home. And I remember watching this the first time and I was like, he's going to die. He's dead. Like, they realize that Hawkeye is not that interesting of a character. Nobody really cares if he's here or not. He doesn't really add anything to the team in universe or out. Like,
yeah, I guess I didn't
dead.
think so, but I also have future knowledge, and I don't know, I guess I just didn't really think of it.
So did you find that scene yet?
Yeah, I sent it to you.
Yeah, it's the opposite shoulder.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. Look at her. Okay, her left shoulder, it goes from there down. He's holding it
He's holding it on like
gash.
the biggest spot ever.
When you see her get shot, no, because when you see her get shot, he shoots like a beam across her and it goes diagonally.
Yeah, I just sent
down.
the other picture.
Yeah, he's holding it on her shoulder, not on her chest. Maybe. I think it's a shoulder.
I think
whatever.
You're trying to save face.
No, because I still think.
I can give you the time code if you want.
Nah, I don't care enough. I'll just concede and make things easier for both of us. Future Andrew here, and I just rewatched that scene, and I don't concede shit.
The problem is there is a cut, so I can't do it of him putting it on. But I don't believe he covers the wrong shoulder.
From your picture, it looks like he could be holding it on her chest. I remembered him like grabbing it and then like grabbing her shoulder, but I could be misremembering.
I don't remember any of these. I think he just wanted to touch the boobies.
But yeah, Quicksilver dies. No one cares. Hulk
smashes zucchinis.
Hulk jumps into a Quinjet
and flies into the sunset.
And then they have a new Avengers base. Iron Man quits again.
Does he?
Because he does that at the end of 2.
Does he quit? I got the movie up.
He says something. He says something where he's like, I'm out. I'm done with this. I'm good to go. And they leaves. I mean, I don't know. I thought it
seemed like I'm just like leaving.
It seemed like
it didn't seem like fuck S.H.I.E.L.D. and Avengers.
It seemed like an I'm out skis sort of thing, which I agree he should do because this is all his fucking fault.
To be fair, he made Vision.
To be fair, he made Vision to combat Ultron.
To be fair, he made a kid. He called a kid a homo or something.
He did. Oh, what a scumbag.
It's not even throwing Tony Stark under the bus because he put himself there. But every time I watch these movies and Hawkeye's in it, I'm just like...
We didn't throw him under the bus. We're just revving the engine.
No, that's why I say. Every time I watch these movies with Hawkeye in it, I'm always like, who is sitting here going, there's Clint Barton, my favorite hero in the MCU. He's a total non-character and super boring. And then we just rag on Iron Man. I'm just like, who's sitting there and being like, man, I love Iron Man. He's such a fucking asshole.
Well, everybody remembers all the cool things he does, like be the funny clown man in the Iron Man suit. He says all the funny, quippy things and then shoots lasers, and no one stops to think that everything is his fucking fault.
He has the Hulk buster.
Especially that part at the I think it's when everybody's yelling at him for making Ultron, and he's like, did you guys forget when I threw a bomb into the space? And I was like, okay, dude, like... Yes, you did one good thing. You also built a bunch of weapons. You were the reason for Ironmonger. You were the reason for the Mandarin. You were the reason for the stupid what's it called? Exodus? Whatever the stupid magma people thing. You were the reason for Ultron. You're the reason for Wanda and
that's what I said.
Pietro hating you. Like, the dude sucks. He's the worst.
No, I don't like how they think that they're doing like a cool thing about like his PTSD, but they don't. Like they did it in this one too, where he's just like when Vision talks about his survivor syndrome or something, or maybe that was Sam Jackson, but they have that thing where like survivor's guilt about his vision. And it's just like, I don't know. I just feel like you kind of squandered that in Iron Man 2 or 3 or whatever one we watched.
Part of the big problem with that is he's always got to be the quippy funny man.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel like I guess you can do it.
I mean, you can be a tortured person who makes jokes. I live that. But
I am Pagliacci.
He has no personality change. He's nonstop, like, quippy bullshit. Let's have fun.
Again, I think it's the Clint Barton problem where it's just like, we got 2.5 hours. We don't have time to deal with this with him other than like a couple lines here and there. And it also doesn't help that these movies are so tonally juxtaposed. Yeah. And there's never any space to breathe or anything like that. So
there were a handful of times in this movie where I was like, oh, they kind of let that sit. But I can't remember any of them, but there were multiple times where I was like, now's not the time for that. Especially, I think the big one is, like I said, when Clint's laying on that chair and he's just like, today's been a rough day, or whatever the fuck he says. And it's like, Quicksilver's body is literally bleeding out right next to you.
I didn't recognize that.
The man died to save your life, and you're here, like, your last little bit as you lay on a chair is to be like, oh, rough day at the office. Fuck you.
I did not recognize that as Quicksilver.
It says Stark leaves and Barton retires, so Maybe Stark was just leaving, but I thought he had some kind of line where he was like, I'm done with this, even though he's going to show up more. But Barton apparently retires, full on retires, which good on him. He shouldn't have been there in the first place. And then Captain America and Black Widow are training the new team of Avengers that includes War Machine, Vision, Scarlet Witch, and
Falcon.
The Falcon. And then in the mid-credits scene, Thanos grabs a gauntlet and says he's going to get the Infinities. He's going to get all those dang Infinity Stones. Bada bing. Bada boom. Seth, you know what? Let's change things up. Why don't you give me 2 put-ups and a put-down?
I had these, and I have since forgotten, I guess. This is dumb, but I liked seeing Don Cheadle at the end. Because I liked, again, the spectacle, and just kind of like, it's neat to see them, to watch them build this world up, this universe up, and to call back. And that's why I was so disappointed in not seeing Falcon during the final fight.
Oh, at the end when they're saving everybody.
Yeah.
I thought you meant at the end during the roll call, and you're just
no.
I don't care about those other 3, but Don Cheadle was there, and I loved it.
No. Oh, my other put up is the cool, like, horror Scarlet Witch stuff at the very beginning. I thought that was really well done. My put down is going to be Elizabeth Olsen's, like, Russia voice. It bothered me.
Not, what's his name's?
James Spader's Russia voice?
No, her brother.
Anthony
whoever
Taylor Thomas?
played.
No.
Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Long Dong Johnson?
How about this? I think it was like the same year.
They did Godzilla together.
Yeah, where they were a couple.
Couple of buddies.
They were like husband and wife. And where do you rank this in your every Marvel movie ever ranking?
They're starting to kind of, I think I mentioned this last time, they're starting to bleed together. I would say, or I put this at number 4, right behind the Avengers and right above Iron Man. I think the Avengers, since it was the first to kind of have that moment where everybody's together, like I said, in that episode, that was kind of a special moment. This kind of feels like a rehash of that. I think there's a little bit of it, like I said, when Don Cheadle shows up in the big fight scene, and some of the stuff with Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, but it just didn't, it felt a little samey.
So my first put up is also the Scarlet Witch spooky scene when she walks backwards through the door. I really like that, and I wish she did more stuff like that. And as these movies go on, it's more of the final battle stuff where she just kind of like flings her arms around and arches her fingers and red sparks go everywhere. My second put up is I like when Black Widow used the shield. My put ups are like specific little bits. Like I said, this is full of like
There's
good
stuff
moments
in it,
and good ideas. I just think they're all either like
mixed in with some
dispersed
mediocrity
throughout,
and
yeah,
a long movie and kind of samey.
My put down is Tony Stark. The dude sucks. Like, this is just another movie where everything is his fucking fault, and he doesn't take ownership of his his faults and his problems. And some of this is, I mean, watching all these movies, you really see it in quick succession like this. But even with future knowledge, like, this is not the last time something is his fucking fault, and it's annoying. On top of that, he made that stupid line about
Banging
reinstating. Yeah, that's. Yeah.
Oh, I could have also
cool.
said like Clint's little superhero monologue. That was good too. Honorable mention.
Yeah, that was also good. And I put this also, despite different movies being around it, I also put this in number 4. Right underneath Captain America, the First Avenger, and right above the original Avengers. It's a standard sequel. It's bloated, but I think there's a lot of stuff to like in it, and I think overall it's just more kind of like Iron Man 2. It's the same movie in many ways again, but it's got more interesting things happening within it, so it's more entertaining overall.
I think it's hard to, for me, they're probably interchangeable, but like I said, there's just something about seeing everybody come together for the first time for me.
Yeah, but this one has Don Cheadle coming together. Nothing from you?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Thanks for hanging out with us. If you like this, tell a friend. If you didn't, then lie to a friend. Check us out on Twitter at SoHowAbout. You can find me on Twitter at SethKumpf. You can find Andrew on Twitter at TessuDownist. And subscribe to us on YouTube at SoHowAbout.
And join us next time when we do this once more with Interference.
Watcher. Boop, boop.
All right, Seth, now that the mics are off, what are we watching next time?
Well, Andrew, I'm glad you asked. We're going to be watching Ant-Man, which is similar to Batman, but he said, "Father, I shall become an ant."
Criminals are a large and superstitious lot.
Are they?
Probably.
I don't think so.
I don't know.